Hi there, this is Doris Bender of Library Arts, and today we're getting ready for Halloween. I have for you here a simple frame, a spooky painting with an owl and a glittery moon, and I'm going to show you step by step how we're going to put this whole project together. Stick with me as I go over the supply list, the steps for making it, and we'll get started soon. See you in a moment. All right, let's go over the materials. You're going to have a frame, and on the back of the frame, you're going to see that I have put a piece of paper with the owl image on it, and it's being held in place by a couple pieces of tape. Keep that there for now. You're going to have some paint for doing the background of the picture, a marker for tracing, a brush, a sponge for using on the back of the picture frame, some Mod Podge to adhere this little gold circle. So this is a glue and sealant. Now my paint is in a little palette, but you should have gotten paint in little paint cups, and probably, I believe I gave you a little white glitter for sprinkling on at the end. Okay, now that we've gone over all the materials, what you're gonna be doing first for the next step, which will be in the next video, is to keep your frame on top, get your marker out, and I'm gonna want you to trace over the image, and I'll do that in the next video. See you soon. Okay, let's get started with the first step. The first step is going to be to take your marker and to trace over your image. Now you don't need to press hard, nor do I want you to press hard, but I want you to trace over the marker lines with your black marker. You wanna make sure that you're just tracing the shapes that you see. You don't have to get everything, but you'll know how well you did because when you take off the paper, you can see, if I take it off a little bit back here, just by peeling it back, you can see how much I've already traced. See how it's going on top? So you're going to continue till you trace the whole picture onto the front outside of your frame. And then I want you to peel that paper off so we can work on the back. So you go ahead and finish your tracing, and I'll see you back here with the paper and tape removed and the frame flipped over. Okay, see you in a minute. Okay, we're back again. You should have an image on the front of your plexiglass window here. Now we're gonna flip it over. Now I want you, don't worry about any hot glue strings like you see on mine here, to next get out your gold shape. This is your moon. Now we want the moon to basically highlight that owl. So I think you could even just like hold it in place to see what it looks like, so you can make sure you have the right positioning for your moon. Now you're going to take the Mod Podge, which is a white glue and sealant, and we're just going to put a little bit down. It's going to go on white, but it's going to dry clear, so don't worry about the whiteness. So I kind of know where I want my moon now, so I'm going to pick it up. I'm going to put a little bit of Mod Podge in the basic size of a circle to cover up my owl. You don't need a ton. Again, keep it on the thin side, but you definitely want to see enough there. And you want to put the moon face down with the white paper up. So I'm going to put it there, press it down, smooth it out. Now flip it over and see if it needs adjusting. I think it looks pretty good. Again, that whiteness should disappear later on. It did on my other one. It just needs time to dry. Now I'm going to flip it back over. Put that glue aside. Now you're going to want to get out that mixture of blue colors that I have for you. And I would just take your craft stick that comes for your glue, or just take and dump it like this, or if you have another paintbrush, just put a dollop. Don't put it all on, just put a dollop on. And you're going to get your sponge. Now there's probably two sides to your sponge. There's probably a rough side and softer side. I want you to definitely use that softer side. If you want to dampen it a little, not a bad idea, but you're just going to tap and spread that paint around. Guess what? I'm gonna go right on top of that moon. Try not to shift the moon as it's glued down, but I definitely want to get it covered. Whoops, shifted a little bit, but not bad. Okay, let's see. Yeah, it's fine. Just be very gentle when you're going over the moon so you don't shift it, because you want it to stay in place. And I just want you to make that paint go all the way to the edges of your glass by tapping, not smearing. I want you to tap. The smearing will leave streaks when you flip it over. That's why you want to tap. The tap gives it a nice little texture. And I am going right into the corners. I don't care if it gets a little on my frame. That is not really going to be seen by anybody, so I don't really care about that. Now remember, a lot of the picture on the front is going to be painted in, so you don't have to worry about, oh, I see through the blue, and people get very concerned if they can see light coming through the blue paint. Don't get too concerned. And your marker image is still there. You don't have to worry about that disappearing. Still going to be there. Going to get over into this corner, and it is important that you get into the edges and the corners. And I'm taking that extra paint from the center and getting up here. Again, very gentle over the circle so you don't shift it. That paint is actually going to help hold it down too, as well as the glue. So once you're done with that, you're going to flip it over. So just look for this kind of orange peel texture, if you will. That's okay if you have an orange peel. If you don't, you're probably smearing it. So try to get that orange peel texture. Check all the corners and edges to make sure you got paint there. If not, take some of that extra paint and put it out near the edges. Like I see, I could make it a little thicker around here. And then we'll flip it over for the big reveal in the next video. See you in a moment. We're back. Now, one of the things I didn't mention before is, of course, you have a paintbrush, but it's good to have a paper towel, because for the next step, we're going to begin to paint on the glass on the front. And you're going to want a paper towel where you can dry your brush and get all the water out of it before you dip it into the paint, because you don't want water puddling up on top of your window here. Now, look. No paint, because the paint's on the back, and you want to do your best not to touch the back of this picture now, because if you do, and your finger actually is going to make a smear, it's going to remove some of the paint, so we want to leave it alone, let that glue dry on the moon, and now we're going to focus on painting the front of our picture. So I'm going to keep my water cup nearby, my brush nearby, my paper towel in particular nearby, and I'm going to start to paint. Well, why not paint in our owl? Our spooky owl. Dry your brush really, really well. And then I want you to take some black, and you can start to fill in that spooky owl. It's so dark, we're not even going to see his beak. We're just going to see his glowing eyes. Now, at first, his eyes are going to look like they're golden, right? Well, we're going to add some color in a few minutes. If your paint seems to be going on kind of streaky, you need to put on a little bit heavier, okay? I'm using just the tip of my brush to paint, because I find that it works out better if I just use the tip and I don't flatten the brush out. Let the tip of the brush hold the paint and apply the paint. So there is my owl, looking quite spooky, but I don't really want him to have that gold behind his eyes. So I'm going to clean my brush really well, get a tiny bit of that yellow on the tip of my brush, and I'm going to put in some nice bright yellow around his pupil. So this is sort of going, the whites of the eyes are going to be yellow. And that's so I can put a nice dark pupil in next with the black paint. That's what I want. In fact, sometimes what I like to do is I like to do the whole circle yellow like this, and let the eyes sort of float in the center. So let's just do that. Or you could make them looking to the right or left. And again, I'm going to put a nice heavy layer. I'm not going to put the pupils in yet. I want to give that yellow paint a little time to dry. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to move on to my tree. My tree also, drying my brush after cleaning it, is going to be black. And then we're going to go back and we're going to add some white highlights. So I'm going to make sure I take my paint all the way to the edge of the frame. It's okay if there's a little streakiness in your paint because you get a nice pretty blue from the sky glowing through, and that's kind of nice. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. Remember that a branch has thickness, so these two lines together form the outer edges of your branch. And I would re-dip your paintbrush frequently as you fill in the branches. Now, when I get up to like a branch like this where the owl is sitting, the owl is basically going to blend right into the branch, isn't he? That's okay. That's intentional. We're going to allow that to happen like so. Okay? So paint in your whole tree. This too is a branch, by the way, and that's sky behind it. So paint in your whole branch from the trunk all the way over here, in here, here, and if you want to do your black bats, you can do that as well. And when you come back, we'll add some white highlights. And by the way, don't bother painting in the little hole in the tree yet. We'll come back to that. See you in a minute. Okay, we're back. So at this point, your tree, your owl, your branches, and maybe even your bats have been painted in. I didn't paint that last one, and it's okay if you did, because I want to maybe put a cloud-like color in there first. But before we get into the cloud, I want to get into the tree trunk here and the branches, and this is where your additional white can be helpful. We're going to just kind of drag some thin white lines, and you could brush the paint off as you do this, and just thin white lines to suggest kind of bark within the tree, just subtle lines. You don't want them to be too bright. You can actually encourage them to blend in and be a little bit more gray. And I'm actually going to take some of that gray and put it in the hollow here. So I have a little white and black. And I'm going to surround the eyes in the hollow, sort of like these eyes are peeking out of the shadows, like that. Again, wiping my brush, I'm just going to take and drag some more of these bark lines into the tree, into the branch, maybe over here where the owl was sitting. Again, trying to make them maybe a little bit gray here and there so they don't stand out too brightly, because we don't want that. And we're doing this technique, is called wet into wet. You're actually dragging your white paint through the black already wet paint. So go ahead and do that. And then you can think about maybe having a little white with a tiny bit of blue added and making sort of a light blue sky color, which I'm doing right here. You could do on a piece of foil, a paper plate. And I'm just going to paint in this little cloud like this, trying to get rid of those outlines. And then I'm going to put the black bat right on top. So there's a cloud. I'm going to put a little V-shaped black bat on top. Remember how we used yellow for the eyes of the owl? I'm going to go back and do the same thing for the critter inside the tree here. Oh, got a little water in there. You can see how it puddles up if you get too much water. So I may have to come back and redo that eye. Let it dry a little bit. And now that I think these eyes are drier, I'm going to go back and put a single dot in each of the owl's eyes to make it look like he's kind of staring at you as you look at the picture. And then I'm going to take a little bit of black, And I'm going to be very gentle. I'm going to just put a little black outline around the edge of the moon. You can go ahead and do that, and I'll see you back here to finish up shortly. Okay, we're back. Trees painted in, the eyes, I sort of let those sit for a minute. Now I'm going to go back, and I am going to add a black pupil to each one, but I want that little hollow to stand out a bit more. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to do the opposite of what I did around the moon, which was to add a black line. This time I'm going to add a little white, nice dry brush again, little white line outlining the hollow of the tree to make those eyes really stand out like that. And then the next thing I'm going to do, add some spookiness to the sky. I'm going to clean my brush. I'm going to dry it really, really well on my paper towel, and I'm going to take just the tiny tip of my brush, and I'm going to put tiny yellow stars throughout the sky, just like that. Just tiny little yellow stars. Now you can make some bigger, but I want to get that feeling of a night sky with all the spookiness. And that is almost it. If you have a little white glitter, you're just going to take a sprinkle, put it a little on here to give it a little bit of sparkle. If I didn't give you glitter, it doesn't really need it, but it just gives it a little finish. You don't have to have it to have a successful painting. Just blowing off the extra glitter. I'm going to let that dry completely. Again, do not tempt yourself with touching the back of that paint because you're going to smear it. Let it dry overnight, stand it up the next day, and you have a phenomenal spooky painting. This is Doris Benter of Library Arts. I hope you enjoyed creating this spooky owl painting with me today. In the meantime, I hope you enjoy this project. I hope you stay well. And of course, I hope to see you soon again. Take care and happy Halloween. Bye-bye. Okay, we're back. Trees painted in, the eyes, I sort of let those sit for a minute. Now I'm going to go back, and I am going to add a black pupil to each one, but I want that little hollow to stand out a bit more. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to do the opposite of what I did around the moon, which was to add a black line. This time I'm going to add a little white, nice dry brush again, little white line outlining the hollow of the tree to make those eyes really stand out like that. And then the next thing I'm going to do, add some spookiness to the sky. I'm going to clean my brush. I'm going to dry it really, really well on my paper towel, and I'm going to take just the tiny tip of my brush, and I'm going to put tiny yellow stars throughout the sky, just like that. Just tiny little yellow stars. Now you can make some bigger, but I want to get that feeling of a night sky with all the spookiness. And that is almost it. If you have a little white glitter, you're just going to take a sprinkle, put it a little on here to give it a little bit of sparkle. If I didn't give you glitter, it doesn't really need it, but it just gives it a little finish. You don't have to have it to have a successful painting. Just blowing off the extra glitter. I'm going to let that dry completely. Again, do not tempt yourself with touching the back of that paint because you're going to smear it. Let it dry overnight, stand it up the next day, and you have a phenomenal spooky painting. This is Doris Benter of Library Arts. I hope you enjoyed creating this spooky owl painting with me today. In the meantime, I hope you enjoy this project. I hope you stay well. And of course, I hope to see you soon again. Take care and happy Halloween. Bye-bye.